It is time for your regularly scheduled Pride Month video from the asexual author. Happy International Pride! I was initially, to celebrate this, going to make a list of asexual characters that I would ride or die for. But then I noticed a trend. Half of the characters that I listed were from the same production company. Half of them were from Dropout's Dimension 20. And of course the only Dropout shirts that I own are from a franchise that has yet to introduce an asexual to us. It's hardly a surprise that I'm recognizing Dimension 20 for this when it has a history of creating a wide range of diverse stories throughout all of its campaigns. Stories from different sexual identities, gender identities, racial identities, immigrants, children of immigrants, and so much more. All this literally from Season 1, Episode 1. And as a whole, Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop spaces have become a safe space for queer people to be able to express and explore facets of themselves. I highly recommend that you watch Rowan Ellis's video on this, which also includes some interview footage from Brennan Lee Mulligan and Ali Beardsley from Dimension 20. But today we are not talking about that. We are talking about the plethora of asexual representation in Dimension 20. For those unaware, Dimension 20 is one of the flagship shows from online production company Dropout, which stemmed off of College Humor. In Dimension 20, the cast play various role-playing games where they explore different characters, fantasy settings, sci-fi settings, you name it. They've done it or they're gonna do it. Dimension 20 has created a variety of characters of different asexual identities and different asexual stories that other people have yet to explore. And I'm surprised that, according to my research, nobody else has been talking about this. And it isn't just through Dimension 20. Dungeons & Dragons games and other TTRPGs have been such safe queer spaces. This is because that with the right table and the right players, a safe space can be created for these people to be able to explore themselves and identities that they may not identify as brackets yet. I have been guilty of this as I have played both a paladin and a rogue who both identified as asexual. One such a giant in this space, Critical Role, has got a character from Campaign 2 that also identifies as asexual, Caduceus Clay. I'm acknowledging him so that the commenters don't get upset for me missing talking about him. But I'm specifically drawing focus to Dimension 20 because their shorter campaigns have meant for a lot more characters to be explored, including characters of asexual spectrum identities. And what I'm about to do is explore them with you and discuss these representations. So there will be spoilers ahead for Fantasy High, A Crown of Candy, and A Court of Fey and Flowers. Some of these will be major plot-related spoilers, and others more just the subplots. Some of them are more intrinsically tied than others. So I won't hate you if you stop this video and don't watch for the sake of spoilers. I just hope that you return after you've watched these three. Let's start with Prince Andhera, the only asexual character that has been seen in a side quest show, not including the main 7 cast completely. Prince Andhera comes from the campaign A Court of Fey and Flowers, which combines Dungeons & Dragons with the Pride and Prejudice role-playing system to create a fantasy of manners sort of story set in the Feywild. Prince Andhera is our resident asexual, played by Omar Najam. I think I pronounced his name correctly. I am sorry, Omar, if I did not. He confirmed his character's identity in a session of the talkback show Adventuring Party, and he also confirmed it on Twitter. He also confirmed that Andhera was somewhere on the aromantic spectrum as well, but for some reason that tweet in my research disappeared. Considering that this character does end up getting into a romantic relationship, we can assume that he is on a grey romantic spectrum and potentially a grey asexual spectrum. Andhera is also a huge win for intersectional queerness. Andhera is non-binary and is being played by a person of color. I'm not going so far as to say that Andhera is actually a person of color because he is a fae, and I don't know if we should be applying human race concepts to fairies. I mean, I guess you could call Andhera a fae of color in the real technical sense. I don't know. They are also being portrayed by an asexual person, the only person in this list to do so as far as I'm aware, and as far as things are at the time of recording this. Andhera's plot is about an asexual finding love. With this season of Dimension 20 being released in 2022, around the time of the Bridgerton TV show boom, I'd say that this is very much an important piece of asexual representation. From my own asexual identities, Regency romance has never been something I've been drawn to. I've never really been fond of stories where finding a romance or finding a long-term relationship sort of goal is the primary goal of a character, which is the case for 90% of Regency characters, unfortunately. And while in Andhera's case this concept wasn't explored entirely deeply, it doesn't need to. And I can notice a lot of the attraction differences between Andhera and Binks versus other characters. The way that this attraction develops from my perspective starts through a friendship. Omar adds some asexual flavor to mechanics as well. You get resistance or immunity to being frightened or charmed. Thus, you can't fall in love by magical means, which seems to be a very asexual thing that Omar was trying to portray through Andhera. And this was to also illustrate how naturally and easily he ended up finding himself being attracted to Binks when Binks reveals their true form. This read to me as an aromantic and asexual spectrum experience. It feels demi to me, having developed attraction to someone after getting to know a person and developing attraction through personality. And Andhera does some pretty romantic deeds after that. There's also a very different vibe that I get off of Binks and Andhera's relationship compared to the deep sexual tension that happened between KP and Rue, for example. I don't know if the different vibe is exactly the ace accommodation or the asexuality of it, but I feel something about it that resonates with me. Just saying. But I think this is a very enjoyable piece of representation to see an asexual spectrum character in a romantic setting. This quite often doesn't end up being the focus for a lot of asexual characters, so this is a very refreshing thing for me, especially in a genre that hinges on romantic and sometimes sexual tension. There wasn't really much of that for Andhera, and it was very refreshing. But enough about the romantic series. Let's get on to the series that don't focus so much on romance, but instead on romance partners. We are now moving on to our first intrepid hero player character, Riz Gukgak in Fantasy High, played by Brian Murphy. Riz is a goblin rogue who goes to the Egg-Fort Adventuring Academy in the series, and is part of the bad kids main group who ends up doing a lot of things to shame Elmville and the world as a whole throughout the series. Tangent aside, because I know this is on the wiki for Siobhan's character, Adine. There was a moment during a live show where someone speculated that Adine might be asexual. I believe it was Kristen, if I remember right. But as Adine did end up developing a crush on somebody in season 3, it remains inconclusive. I'm not saying that she isn't, there just hasn't been so much hard evidence or exploration or confirmation from people as there has been for our boy Riz. Maybe if things become more conclusive by season 4, we can add this to the list. But Riz Gukgak, he is both aromantic and asexual. His story falls into a sort of self-discovery arc as he discovers his asexual identity and comes to terms with it throughout Fantasy High sophomore year. Yes, sophomore becomes before junior, which makes no sense because junior to me gives the impression of being young, so why is junior followed by senior and... You Americans are so weird. I personally find Riz's arc to be one of the best depictions of asexuality literally ever. This is because of how some of his experience resonated with my experiences in high school even before I identified as asexual. For context, at the start of season 2 of Fantasy High, 4 out of 6 of the player characters have pursued someone romantically or sexually. Kristen and Gukgak both have girlfriends, Fig has flirted with a lot of people, and Fabian is trying to get into a relationship with Adine's sister. While this doesn't seem to bother Adine, who's mentioned earlier, it deeply bothers Riz. So he makes up that he is in a long-distance relationship with somebody from the Baronies, thus why they don't see each other that much. It's a long-distance relationship. A good cover-up story. This resonated with me a bit. I literally made a joke in high school that I was sleeping with somebody for 1 month straight and that my clone was going to be in high school for me while I committed that act. My friend group knew this was a joke, and I very much emphasized that it was a joke. But many jokes have a hint of truth or insecurity in them. I barely found anyone attractive, like, at all at that age. Not even in my high school, just nobody. Everyone else in my friend group seemed to basically salivate, squeal, or has been in some kind of relationship before. You know, those typical sort of feminine reactions to someone that they have a crush on. You know, like One Direction, Justin Bieber and all that, but I never experienced that. In year 9, I even claimed to, like, say that I wanted to get with someone just because my friends were insisting, like, you should have a relationship with this guy, and I was like, sure, I guess. We didn't actually, though. That whole time, I just assumed that I was a late bloomer, and I thought wrong, because by the time I actually gained attraction to people, it was never for the sake of sex. Back to Riz. What the main antagonist of this season does, the Nightmare King, is manifest this fictional boyfriend that Riz made up into real life. And it looks like this weird, creepy skeleton puppet thing. Riz justifies that this puppet, which he named Baron, could not be real. Which Baron replies that you shouldn't be so hurtful or harmful to your romance partner. Which can also be seen as a Save the Cat beat about Riz not lying to himself. He shouldn't be lying to himself, and he's lying to himself and everyone else by creating this fictional partner. Later down the line, he ends up discussing his aromantic and asexual tendencies to his allosexual dad, and I really like the conversations that happened within this sort of episode where it happened. It was a very sweet way for Riz's dad to validate his son. I love how the conversation is interpreted for wherever Riz ends up being on the aromantic and asexual spectrum. And it's also just such a great form of allyship. Such a great dad thing to do, to reassure his son that what he's going through is actually normal. So kudos to Brennan for also making that conversation improvised as well. It's great. In the climax, when Riz gets lost in the forest of the Nightmare King by himself, who else pursues him again but Baron? He is shown many images of his friends or family in romantic and sexual relationships, and it is implied that when everyone else has these partners, Riz is going to be left alone. He is shamed for his difference by Baron. Ultimately, Riz is able to come to terms with his sexuality, whatever it may be. He accepts that it will mean that his life is different, but it doesn't mean that his friends will love him any less just because they have other partners out there. His friendship won't be weakened as a result of everyone else being in relationships. Now, for some reason, despite this being the most asexual experience that I have ever seen ever, some people aren't conclusive about this. The word asexual was never muttered as a way for Riz to describe himself throughout Fantasy High. It wasn't until an adventuring party for a spin-off show of Fantasy High that Brennan actually used the word asexual to confirm Riz's identity, having helped create his story with Brian Murphy. But like, how can people be doubting this? This is one of the few experiences where asexuality is shown and not told. I feel like asexuality is one of the few instances where people think you can only be asexual or be confirmed asexual in a show if you use the A word. I can't see how Riz cannot be asexual due to how much I alone connected with his story. And going blind into this about sophomore year, I did not know that Riz was going to be another asexual character, because I had seen a story from a different asexual character first. Someone who confidently uses asexual to describe their identity. And it's in an unexpected place. Candyland. We're talking Liam Wilhelmina from A Crown of Candy, played by Allie Beardsley. If a character played by Allie Beardsley in a season of Dimension 20 is not queer in some form, then something is wrong in this world. Crown of Candy is described as Game of Thrones meets Candyland, in which the Kingdom Candy of Candia ends up going to war against other food groups across this nation. Liam is a candy cane inspired ranger who is a cousin and also a political prisoner of the Rocks family that rules utter Candia. He's getting pretty well taken care of as well for a political prisoner, to be real. Liam is the only character who, in-game, confidently uses the term asexual to describe himself. His asexuality impacts his own little subplots in this story as he has to court people and come out to them and a lot of other people around him. We can see that Liam's asexuality links to growing up in a hypersexual household and not being comfortable with that. His dad is polyamorous and has a lot of sex with a lot of partners. So sex is not something that Liam says he wants to do. And it makes him very awkward when it comes to courtship and flirting. And he sometimes can't even recognize the signs that he's being flirted with. The two main people that he ends up coming out to in the course of this story are his dad and his eventual partner. His dad, very thankfully, accepts Liam's identity when he does come out. Liam is also depicted in an asexual relationship with Primsy Cold Bottle, a bottle of milk. She also realizes that she is on the asexual spectrum after Liam comes out to her. The two end up having a happy political marriage, knowing that they will both be able to do things that they are each comfortable with. A relationship with two asexuals. I like it when we see a relationship between two asexuals. Having multiple asexual people in a single story alone is also something that's very rare and very satisfying for me, regardless of whether they are in a romantic relationship together or not, because community is a very important part of different aspec and aromantic identities. I even like that relationship-wise, Primsy is able to lay down on the table right before their relationship starts the various things that she is and isn't comfortable with. Sadly, I have yet to date an asexual myself, but these kinds of stories give me hope and understanding for what a potential relationship with another asexual may look like, and the different steps that I can take to ensure that we both feel comfortable in our relationship. I do wish that we would have seen more of the relationship between Liam and Primsy, considering they don't officially get together until like the last couple of episodes, but that does lead me into what I want to see more of from Dimension 20 and other production companies as a whole when it comes to asexual representation. Because while they have done very well so far, there's still some gaps. Going forward, I'd like to see a player character confidently portray an asexual who has a feminine lining identity. It doesn't have to be female, it could be a non-binary feminine person, it could be a trans feminine person, it could be somebody who is gender fluid. I just want to see more femme asexuals. I also want to see more explorations of asexual community and maintaining a relationship as an asexual. Those are two stories that as a whole I do not see across asexual media. It's always the coming out, it's always the self-discovery, it's never the exploration of the asexual experience beyond that, and I would really love to see that. I would also love to see more intersectionality with portrayals of asexuals. Representations as a whole are not very intersectional in media, but I believe that if anybody can do this, it can be Dimension 20. Some intersectional things such as a same-sex relationship with at least one asexual, polyamory involving asexuals, a neurodivergent asexual. Those are quite common things that happen in reality, they're just not really portrayed as much in media. And of course, more ace people playing ace characters. I would be honored if I could end up being one of those people. I'm just saying, but it's not really likely right now. Regardless, I think it would be awesome to be in a production company portraying an asexual in that company that has done so much, in my opinion, for asexual representation as a whole. Like, the only other entity that has portrayed more aces or an equal amount of aces to Dimension 20 is the author Alice Oseman. But whether or not I do get the privilege of portraying an asexual character with a company that I love, thank you Dimension 20 for bringing my people to life. And I hope that if you haven't watched any of Dimension 20's shows that you are able to go and watch them now because of how good this asexual representation is. Fantasy High is a great place to start, as seasons 1 and 2 are both available on YouTube. You don't need to subscribe to Dropout to go and see them, but if you do want to fancy it, then I highly recommend you do. Dropout is a very ethical company in the media world, and I love supporting them. Literally the only subscription that I own myself. And if you want me to talk about Dimension 20 more, let me know down in the comments. I'm of course going to be talking about asexuals more, it's part of my identity. I have 3 set times a year now, which I must talk about being asexual. So subscribe, stick around for that. Give this video a like, Stay tuned for my journey as I write my own asexual characters and stories, and I shall see you in another world.